now we played euchre yesterday. First time we've ever tried.
How does that work?
It worked all right.
Actually, it's still in the army.
Right, I was never about that.
Yes. Yeah. So they play against each other like a team. So, and all the rules are
It's not like you're a team.
Well, they're opposing each other, but each first yeah. So did you lay out the balls? Gave yourself 5 points.
Yeah.
take out of it.
Kind of quiet.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad.
Morning, guys.
All right, let's find out the reasons for that.
There you are.
But not in the front row.
Okay.
Oh, do they really?
Realize that. He sat in the front for a few weeks.
Not real busy. We went for the property.
Oh, that could be too.
We have to get land, all these. Hopefully we got all the paperwork down fast. And we'll start building it. You normally don't get up there every time you get there every summer. Yes.
They're coming back 2 weeks from, yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, he probably used to have a good one.
Oh, they're hanging out with him this week. Enjoy his children. And make sure that they don't like pull out too many toys, right? Yeah. Otherwise it winds up like a big explosion at the end of the week. Yeah.
All those on that
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Yep.
Hanging in there.
Like us, it's mostly just like, okay, looking out, but trying to like remember the other thing away. So you don't have like a whole way to pick up your, yeah. But even then, it's more like, they're like, well, I need the toy out of the spin. I need the toy out of the spin. I'm like, So it's just a matter of like, kind of reading at it.
You know, there's no vicar here, so there's no handouts. Sorry, I'll go get them.
Buzz in their ears. It says it has to be like actual, put the perimeter down, and that means that my sister does. Yeah. That's what we did at my mom's agency. And she's like finding really fast. There's like a big hill right behind her house. And we could just look out the window and see them, and they like clear a little area, like berries and branches that we can.
Yeah, that's a great thing, Robert.
See their little flies around. It's so cute. But yeah,
Read them and wait. We got more. We got lots.
You better call them somebody knows.
So we have been studying Dr. Keller's book, The Reason for God. And the first half of the book was entitled The Leap of Faith. The Leap of Doubt. And what he was trying to encourage us to do was to lean into the doubts that skeptics have about Christianity or about the existence of God, so that we might do two things: that we might provide an antidote to those doubts in our own faith, and also that we might be ready to stand on common ground with some skeptics as we have a chance to evangelize them. Well, the second half of the book moves from the leap of doubt to the upper right-hand reason there, or the box, the reasons for faith. So over the next few weeks, we're going to take a look at these reasons for faith: the clues of God, the problem of sin, religion of the gospel, the true story of the cross, and the reality of the resurrection. And what we're going to start out with today is the clues for God. So those things that should help a skeptic and you and I see that there might be something more to this world than what we see. I read a really interesting thing do you remember when the Russians sent the first cosmonaut up into space? And he came down, and you remember what he said he didn't see up in heaven?
He didn't see God anywhere.
He didn't see God anywhere. And C.S. Lewis at the time, he responded by saying that's like the character in a Shakespearean play looking around for Shakespeare. Right? If there's such a thing as a playwright, he doesn't exist as a member or a part of the play. But yet characters in a Shakespearean play could learn something about the playwright through how the play was written. Right? That's what we're really going to talk about today. Are there things we can learn about the playwright? God is not going to be, if God is the creator of this world and everything that's in it, that means he exists independent from this world. We shouldn't be able to look and say, well, here's where I can prove that I can see God. And that'd be like trying to say Shakespeare's not real because he, the author, doesn't show up in any of his plays. It's just absurd. But instead, we're going to say, what can we learn about the playwright who wrote this whole beautiful thing? That's the clues of God. Take a look at the first couple of quotations there. If one puts aside the existence of God and the survival after life as too doubtful, and one has to make up one's mind as to the use. Then one has to make up one's mind as to the use of life. If death ends all, if I have neither to hope for good nor to fear evil, I must ask myself, what am I here for? And how in these circumstances I must conduct myself? Now the answer is so plain, so unpalatable, that most will not face it. There is no meaning for life, and thus, life has no meaning. Let me read one more. It was true. I had always realized it. I hadn't any right to exist at all. I had appeared by chance. I existed like a stone, a plant, a microbe. I could feel nothing to myself but an inconsequential buzzing. I was thinking that here we are, eating and drinking to preserve our precious existence, and that there's nothing, absolutely no reason for existing. 2 questions. What do you think is driving those comments? And or when have you had or heard thoughts like that, and how did you answer them? What do you think?
Neither of them are very upbeat and seem very,
Neither of them are very upbeat. Exactly. Yep.
very despairing.
Very despairing to think that life has absolutely no meaning.
Fatalistic.
Fatalistic, yeah, maybe that's at best. And at worst, it's nihilistic, right? It's all nothingness, Sharon.
Vacuum in the brain.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? That you just think there's no... See, it's interesting. These are philosophers, and all they do is think. All they do is think.
They think too much.
Maybe they think too much, okay. Have you ever thought that you're nothing but, a pile of carbon, and as soon as the synapses start firing in your neural network, that you're just going to go back to the eternal dirt nap from which you came? It's interesting. How many people do you know, Christian or not, that have expressed opinions like that? Maybe not what I just said, but this here, this despair of nothingness. Because I got to be honest with you, most of the people I know who are skeptics, atheists, or unbelievers don't talk this way. And they certainly don't feel this way. In fact, most of the ones I know, you know what they think? They think their children are really special. Right? They don't think they're just an evolutionary outproduct that survival of the fittest should matter. And they actually think they themselves are kind of special. They have this crazy idea that there should be things like things should be just and right. They got this idea that there shouldn't be bad things that happen to me. Right? Nobody that I know or have met who's an atheist or a skeptic has expressed it anything like these philosophers. I think mostly because the philosophers, by their very nature and by their very work, they have to follow things to their inevitable, utter conclusion. And if you believe that there's no such thing as a playwright, that all this is a cosmic accident, there's no way philosophically for you to end up anywhere other than where Sartre and Mom ended up, which is to say there is no reason for you at all, just a despairing nihilistic existence. And I've got no meaning for life at all, right? Here's the great news, though. When you're dealing with skeptics or unbelievers around you, I don't think any of them actually believe what these 2 guys are saying. They actually think there's something special about their kids, special about them. There should be justice in the world. Good things should happen, not bad things. And what that means is, well, then they're open to listen to some clues for God. Some clues. Now, Keller's point down below in the Skeptic's Objection, he says, how can we believe in Christianity if we don't even know whether God exists? There cannot be irrefutable proof for the existence of God. And many people have found strong clues for his reality, divine fingerprints in many places. The philosopher Alvin Plantinga believes that there are no proofs of God that will convince all rational persons. However, he believes that there are at least 2 or 3 dozen very good arguments for the existence of God. And most readers who take the time to think through Plantinga's list will find some items compelling and others not. However, the accumulated weight of the ones you find appealing can be very formidable. So, first things, setting the stage, what we're not going to talk about today is sharing the gospel with the unbelievers, because that, of course, is what the church's job is to do, and the Holy Spirit creates faith when and where he wills. It's certainly what we want to do is get to the place where we're able to take someone who doesn't know about Jesus and tell them about it. But this is going to be kind of The second half of Dr. Keller's book is, again, trying to say how can we find common ground with the skeptic that we might have the opportunity to share the gospel. And so today is going to be looking at what can we learn about the playwright by looking at his play. You know, if you read Hamlet, you can learn something about Shakespeare, even though Hamlet never appears as a character in his own play. The same thing is going to be true today as we take a look at some of the clues for God's existence. All right, take a look at number 1. The mysterious bang. We have this very solid conclusion that the universe had an origin, the Big Bang. The universe began with an unimaginably bright flash of energy from an infinitesimally small point. This implies that before that, there was nothing. I can't imagine how nature, in this case the universe, could have created itself. And the very fact that the universe had a beginning implies that someone was able to begin it. And it seems to me that had to be one outside of nature, Francis Collins. Just a reminder on the top right, an area where we disagree with Dr. Keller. He reads Genesis chapter 1 as a metaphorical song about creation that we shouldn't take literally. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That part he thinks is a metaphorical song. But Genesis 2, Adam and Eve in the garden, he believes is the historical record of the event. So Dr. Keller would be a very old earth creationist. He believed that God created the world, but he thinks the world is probably 13 billion years old. And that Genesis chapter 1 is a song about a poetic song about God's creative work. We, of course, when we went through that section in the first half of this study, we talked about why, while God could use the evolutionary processes to create the earth, the Bible says that he did not, right? So we cannot change God's word to try to make it make sense. So let's take a look at a couple of questions here, though. Number 3, how is the Big Bang Theory comparable to the account of creation in Genesis, and how is it different? Let's work that out a little bit. Who wants to posit some comparisons? Things that are like it and things that are not like it. Mark.
It happened quickly, sort of at once.
Okay, it happened quickly, all sort of at once. That's a good comparison.
Even Einstein admitted that there was a beginner somewhere out there, and all scientists has to come to some kind of conclusion like that.
Well, it was interesting, you know, that it was, I think, and I'm going to get my science wrong, so don't hold me to this, but I think it was Hubble, the guy they named the space telescope after, that had discovered the expansion of the universe. Before that, it was considered to be, by people that didn't believe in creation, it was considered to be static, eternally static, forever and ever. He found out that galaxies, planets, and everything are racing away from each other and are actually accelerating. Which is kind of weird to think about. It's like throwing a baseball up in the air and it doesn't come back down. It just keeps going faster and faster and faster above you, right? Which is kind of wild, because I preached about this once at the seminary. Think about what that means. That means that someday, right now where you look up in the sky and you see billions of stars, right? Someday, in the far distant future, people on Earth, if we would live that long, would look up and all they would see is inky black darkness. Because we'd be racing away from the light faster than it could catch up to us. And so you would look around and conclude, through natural observation, that the Earth and our solar system were absolutely and utterly alone. No one would actually know the truth unless someone told them about it. Unless someone had left behind a record that said, other things exist. That seems an awful lot to me like the historic preservation that the church has had to say, there's a playwright. There's a playwright. Please.
So, there's a scientist, his name, Neil deGrasse.
Mm-hmm. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, so you know what he said, I don't know if you read this ever, but one of the things he said was, you know, he's this big famous scientist. He said this thing about something coming from nothing. Mm-hmm. He said, we haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as we've said before, you know, Big Bang Theory is that singularity, infinitely small, infinitely dense, infinitely energetic point of all matter that exists. And from there, it exploded outwards. And when you ask where'd the point of singularity come from, they say that's a philosophical question, not a scientific one. Which is a nice way of saying we don't know, and we just leave that to philosophers. How else is it alike or disalike the Genesis account? Anything you know about Big Bang Theory? Tori's thinking something.
Well, it kind of goes along with like the the land and the sea, like how things were created, because everything was crashing together, in scientific terms. Like asteroids were crashing into Earth, so like we couldn't have lived on Earth, technically, but it was all covered in water, but then he created land because it was covered in water first. So
Okay, so the Genesis account bears some relation to it because the Big Bang Theory talks about the universe in which we live being incrementally coalescing, right? And the Genesis account has God creating the world but then bringing order out of disorder. Okay, yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah. What do you think, Sherry?
I am not an expert in any way on any of this, but in my head, I've always thought of like the Big Bang Theory was just not an accident, but kind of what Tori was describing. It just kind of happened, but God had a plan, and it went very methodically.
Okay.
His plan over those days.
Okay. Yep. So a key difference between the Big Bang Theory and the Genesis account. The Big Bang Theory says an explosion 13 billion years ago, and all these things happen by themselves, and we just happen to come to a place where life exists. The Genesis account says no. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That He created this world and brought things together the way they were. And remarkably, He said it didn't take Him 15 or 13 billion years to do it. It took Him 6 days. Right. Jim.
So the biggest difference then would be, they say before the Big Bang there was nothing, but we know there was God.
Okay, that's a good point, but I think that's another really important thing about Big Bang, and this is one of the reasons why you're going to hear science talk less and less about the Big Bang Theory in the years to come. Because I heard one guy describe it as, and I said this before, that we need to get away from describing the universe's creation as a Big Bang because it sounds too much like Genesis. Right?
Another thing, it says it was caused by a flash of energy. That's impersonal, whereas Genesis says the word God, which is personal.
Exactly.
That's
Okay, excellent.
amazing.
Yeah. Is it what Job's is a force of energy, or was it a creative act of a divine being? Right? Yeah. Good.
kind of going along with what you said, the whole idea of the Big Bang Theory is there was this explosion of life. Like, everything started happening, and so a lot of people are going to start, like you said, leaning away from that because it's very Genesis. Like,
Yeah.
God created life, and it happened.
Exactly, yeah.
A big flash of light from an infinitesimally small point sounds kind of like a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, well, in fact, they would say it. What was the result? Nuclear fusion is what fired up in all the stars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It also sounds remarkably to me like, when God said, "Let there be light," and light came screaming out of the mouth of God at 186,000 miles per second. Yeah.
It's still going.
Still going, yeah. Yeah, so you'll see science start to move away from Big Bang type of expressions because it does sound a lot like Genesis. Because number one, it posits that there was a time before which there was nothing. And then that means there was some, so in other words, if you say that, then the universe then becomes what they call contingent, right? It had a beginning. I think I have this question down there. Everything we know in the world is contingent because it has a cause outside of itself. How does that provide a clue for God's existence? How would a skeptic object to it? So if you say there was a point of singularity, before that there was nothing, and the point of singularity, then after that was everything. We have a contingent universe. In other words, there had to have been a cause. What was the cause? How is that a clue for God? Well, I think it's like all of you guys have been saying, if there was nothing, then there was something. It seems like there had to be someone, or as Francis Collins said, if the very fact that the universe had a beginning implies that someone was able to begin it, and it seems to me that had to be outside of nature. That would make the universe contingent. Okay, so we offer that as a clue. What might a skeptic say? If you say, okay, the universe had a beginning, and it had to be begun by someone, the skeptic might say, what do you think, Tori?
The whole point, the infinitesimal point that has all of our matter, even though, like what they were saying, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is all of that matter and mass was just kept crushing, and had to explode at some point. Oh, I just lost that entire train of thought. I'm so sorry.
It was sounding really good. It was on the edge of my shoes. It'll come back to you. What do you think, Sharon?
I was just going to say the Ken Ham series, if you've ever seen, he masterfully asked the head of the science department at Harvard and keeps asking her questions and questions. And then he finally asks her, so do you think you can create something out of nothing? And she looks at him and kind of confused, and she goes, well, yeah, but I need a few million years to do it. This was a head of the science department at Harvard.
Yeah. You know, I think if you're talking about the mysterious bang as a clue for God, I think be ready for a skeptic to answer what could be very appropriately, which is to say, well, okay, if you think you found, you ask me to believe there's a first cause, that still doesn't prove that first cause is the God of your Bible. Right.
Another thing is, I remember we used to be told it was millions of years. Why all of a sudden now is it 1 billion years? Because they need more time.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. It's extrapolating backwards the time required to fine-tune the universe for the existence of life. Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Well, even in that argument, it's even if you're saying it's not the God of my Bible, then it's obviously some kind of God, right?
Okay,
so
and I think
why not be the God of my Bible?
I think that's the point. You know, so if someone is willing to listen to you to look for a clue of God, and okay, well maybe there's a first cause, but that there's no proof that means he's the God of the Bible. Understand, that's a really big important first step. Now we're at least saying, well, maybe there's a playwright. If there's a playwright, that means now we can start talking about what can we learn about this playwright then, right? How about the next one, the cosmic welcome mat. For organic life to exist, the fundamental regularities and constants of physics, the speed of light, the gravitational constant, the strength of the weak and strong nuclear forces, must all have values that together fall into an extremely narrow range. You understand what they're saying there? You know, the universal constants, if they're off by a tiny little bit, if you had the electromagnetic, I'm going to get this one wrong, the binding force for atoms, if that's off by a fraction of a percentage, you know, helium immediately fixes itself to everything else. The universe couldn't develop in any way, shape, or form. If the gravitational constant was off by the tiniest little bit, there's no way that the universe could exist or hold together. And then it says, the probability of this perfect calibration happening by chance is so tiny as to be statistically negligible. Again, Collins puts it well. When you look from the perspective of a scientist at the universe, it looks as if it knew we were coming. There are 15 constants, gravitational constant, various constants about the weak and strong nuclear force, etc., that have precise values. If any one of those constants was off by even 1 part in a million, or in some cases, by 1 part in a million, the universe could not actually have come to the point where we see it. Matter would not have been able to coalesce. There would have been no galaxy, stars, planets, or people. This is called the fine-tuning argument, when we're talking about clues for God, that we live in a universe so uniquely fine-tuned for the appearance of intelligent life that it seems utterly statistically impossible to believe something other than that. Some people call this the anthropic principle. The idea, anthropos is Greek for man, so the idea that the universe seems to be, as Collins put it, seems like it was expecting us, right? So, and the answer a skeptic would say to that, anybody know current skeptic answer to this fine-tuning argument?
I don't know if it's the one you're looking for, but the one that's easily used is that we wouldn't exist without it. So, since it's a survivorship bias, since we're here, it had to have happened that way.
Exactly. Since we're here, it had to have happened that way. Which is a really interesting way to say it. Like I read a lady one time, we talked about the formation of life on Earth. She was obviously a skeptic, and she explained how the conditions that the Earth was in at the time when life would have had to have begun by itself were so absolutely inhospitable for life that it's absolutely impossible to imagine how life could have ever self-generated. And then she said, except that we're here, so it must have. Or there might be another opportunity. Or these statistics are so bad, so out of control, that scientists such as Crick and Watson, do you guys know who they are? They won a Nobel Prize for the double helix of DNA. They've suggested that probably aliens seeded life on Earth. And the only reason they haven't been thrown out of the academic community is because they're, Nobel laureates, yeah. Anybody else, they'd just thrown out. But the whole point is the fine-tuning argument I find really powerful. So, like, I put down the statistics for a deck of cards. I find this fascinating. 52-card deck, if it's properly shuffled, when you put it out, that sequence has never been seen in the history of the universe and will never be seen again. 52 cards, right? So in other words, you properly shuffle a deck of cards. It's the first time that sequence has ever been there in existence, right? So it's what the odds are, the statistics is 8 with 10 to the 67th. So 68 zeros after an 8. That is more than all the atoms of the entire universe. 52 cards, okay? Imagine you and I are playing poker for money, and I'm dealing, and I deal myself in 5-card hand, 4 aces. Good for me, take your money. Next time I deal myself 4 aces again.
I'm leaving.
but wait, some people are far more indulgent, like Pastor wouldn't cheat me. Next time the deal comes around to me, I deal myself 4 aces. Next time it comes around, I take all your money, I deal myself 4 aces in a row. Is it rationally, statistically possible that I dealt myself 4 aces 4 times in a row?
Absolutely.
Even if you were willing to say, well, it might take a trillion years, like the guy at Dumb and Dumber said, so you're saying I've got a chance. But think about this. Even if you could rationally say, well, in a trillion years, maybe there's one chance out of, but there's no way you'd believe that. There's no way you'd believe that I am anything other than a cheat and a liar, right? The current answer that is not just like what you said about survivorship, but this is the point for the multiverse. Which if you hear people talk about multiverse, because the fine-tuning argument says the statistics of this happening are so utterly ridiculous, you would never ever believe it. Think 4 times 4 aces, you wouldn't believe that. This is 52 cards we're talking about. We're not talking about the universe, right? You would never ever believe it, and so the current skeptical answer is, well, there's probably trillions and trillions of universes. And we just happen to be in the one where 4 aces hit 4 times. Right, Robert?
It's amazing. I would ask the skeptic, how can you be so sure of your argument? Because he's a skeptic, right?
Right, yeah.
And if he says, well, I don't know, then you prove our point. Then why should I believe what you don't even know yourself?
Exactly. And I think, go ahead, please.
All of this is always predicated upon an ordered universe. There's no reason for the universe to be ordered.
That is such an astute comment. It's actually my next point in a wonderful segue. Great minds think alike, yeah. So if we could have them say, okay, well, I'm not sure about believing in you getting 4 aces 4 times in a row. This is an opportunity again, okay, let's look at another clue. The regularity of nature, number 3. There's something about nature that is much more striking and inexplicable than its design. All scientific inductive reasoning is based on the assumption of the regularity, the laws of nature, that water will boil tomorrow under the identical conditions of today. The method of induction requires generalizing from observed cases to all cases of the same kind. Without inductive reasoning, we couldn't learn from experience, we couldn't use language, we couldn't rely on our memories. This seems normal and natural to us. Right? Seems normal, natural. That paragraph doesn't bother us, but why does it bother philosophers?
I guess because the existence of the universe was such chaos that there shouldn't be laws or orders that the chaos is running up against.
Okay. All right, that's a good one. A philosopher would say we're making the assumption that the laws of nature will work with regularity, always have and always will. And there's nothing that says that we have any reason to believe that. How can you come to that deduction that the laws of nature should always work exactly regularly? There's nothing that says it has to be that way, unless there's something that requires it. And that, weirdly, seems like there's a playwright again. Someone who enforces regularity in a universe that has no absolute demand for it, And the problem comes in when they lack regularity. You know, like right now, they have, in the Big Bang, or in the theory of the creation of the universe, they've got they've got to find a way to make things go faster than the speed of light, which is really hard to do, it turns out. So right now, every time you read the word cosmic inflation, this is the period of time they cannot explain, where things have to move faster than the speed of light, which they just don't. But it doesn't work unless it does, right? It's an interesting time. We'll see what happens with astrophysics. But yeah, so that's how I think that's a clue for God. In other words, that the fact that our inductive reasoning is based on the fact that the laws of nature are going to have a regularity that the universe, that if it were coming out of chaos, would have absolutely no reason to require it. I mean, I read a great quote about Albert Einstein, smart guy, not a believer really, but more of a deist. He looked at the universe and saw that there had to be design, there had to be a first cause, there had to be, and he wrote a really interesting statement. He said, what really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. What do you think he meant?
To do it or not to do it?
That's the first reading of it. I think it's different than that, though. I think it go back to the fine tuning argument, the gravitational constant, the nuclear force, the universal constant, dark energy, all those things. You know, we said that have to be absolutely perfectly finely tuned. I think his point was when he looks at the physics of it, he said, God really have a choice that the physics have to work this way, because there's no other way we can think of that this would work except for this way. And it's kind of a fascinating thought. Even an unbeliever like Stephen Hawking, when he talks about how the universe came to be and exists, and as we look at it now, says it seems that there has to be some religious implications to it. Just because it's so hard to believe. Again, think of the deck of cards. Sure.
Well, something though, like Albert Einstein helped discover some of these laws. So there are going to be many, many more laws that we're coming up with, like probably changing it from theory to law of creation. But that's not going to happen for quite a few years because of science and everybody's just disagreeing on it. But like I said, people are leaning away from Big Bang theory because they're finding out, oh, this theory is not really working out now, so we have to come up with something else.
Yeah.
So it's really just our understanding of what these laws are.
Yeah. So that was really cool, though. I just said, could he have done it a different way? But not in the universe that we of course attribute God can do anything he wants to, but from our observations, it seems like this is the only way this universe could work, which really underscores the whole fine-tuning argument, and I think can serve as a clue to say, okay, all right, so if there's something else, let's take a look and see what we can learn about it. The fourth one and the last one I want to talk about is the clue of beauty. If there's no God, and everything is the product of, as Russell famously put it, an accidental collection of atoms, then there's no actual purpose for which we were made. We're accidents. If we are the product of accidental natural forces, then what we call beauty is nothing but a neurological hardwired response to particular data. You only find certain scenery to be beautiful because you had ancestors who knew that you would find food there, and they survived because of that neurological feature, and now we have it too. In the same way, though music feels significant, this significance is an illusion. Love, too, must be seen in this light. If we are the result of blind natural forces, then what we call love is simply a biochemical response inherited from our ancestors who survived because this trait helped them survive. What would be the ramifications if that were true? And what do you observe in the lives of skeptics and believers? What do you led to conclude?
Well, it just sounds like you're just basing it all on instinct. I mean, there's no like sacred marriage. There's no reason to be with like that one singular person if you're in love. You can just, oh, I feel love with this guy now. This guy's how I feel in love now.
Okay.
This scenery is nice for me. I'm going to move over here now. Or your house is prettier than mine. I'm going to move into your house now.
Okay.
It makes me feel safer.
Okay, yeah, it obviously would mean no morality doesn't have any bearing at all.
There'd be no morality, yeah.
Jim?
Well, if this were true, then there would never be an agreement on what beauty was. Everybody would have a different opinion. I mean, that could be true, but I mean, we could look at the Mona Lisa and most people would say that's a beautiful painting.
Yes.
Right? If this were true, there would be no agreement.
Yeah, if this were true, either there would be no agreement, or the agreement would have to be a result of the fact that people that found Mona Lisa to be beautiful were more likely to survive, pass on offspring, and therefore we ended up with a target populace that tends to agree on what beauty is. It's just, I don't think this. I don't like I said at the beginning of the class. I don't know any skeptics or atheists who actually believe this. I think they actually believe there's such a thing as love. I think they believe there's such a thing as beauty. And I think for us, how is beauty a clue for God's existence? Ever think about that? Whether it's art, and I'm thinking more art, or Mark.
Well, life is not just meant to be done or complete. It's to be enjoyed, and the creation is a good thing, not just.
Yeah, excellent.
Purely aesthetic pursuits don't really provide any survival benefit.
That's a really good point, right? Purely aesthetic pursuits don't provide survival benefit. In other words, if I think, I might think the mountains are beautiful, but that if they don't actually provide me with more food than the grasslands, I shouldn't find them beautiful. I should find the grasslands beautiful, right? Aesthetics don't do that. But what do aesthetics do? What does beauty do? Why can it be a clue for God? Why, when in his book, Dr. Keller quoted Yitzhak Perelman talking about Beethoven and saying Beethoven's music is just is filled with rightness. He said where the next note could only be the next note. He says this guy's got the stuff from heaven, and he didn't even believe in heaven, right? How is that a clue for God?
If there's beauty, God had to create the eye to see the beauty, right?
Yeah.
So there's already evidence that God is a creator and a designer for us to even see the beauty.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Anybody else?
We have a notion of what's pleasurable for us?
We have a
bad?
we have a notion of what's pleasure. Yeah, it's interesting. The philosophers would call this blessed longing. We have a longing for certain things, and a blessed longing implies that something's there, right? If you have a desire for a steak dinner, you might not get it, but the desire implies that there's something there to fulfill it, right? If you have got a desire for sleep, you might not get it, but the desire in us is evidence that something exists to fulfill it. When we have a blessed longing, a longing for beauty that speaks to me, that for art, for grace, for rightness, we might not get it in this broken world, but the blessed longing itself is a clue that something exists to fulfill it, right? It's a clue that there's a playwright behind it. Now the last page says the clue killer. Skeptic Daniel Dennett says, everything we value, from sugar and sex and money to music and love and religion, we value for reasons. Lying behind and distinct from our reasons are evolutionary reasons, free-floating rationales that have been endorsed by natural selection. So Dennett's saying we cannot trust our feelings. You can't even trust your reason because it's simply a result of natural selection, survival of the fittest. Look at the response box. If it comes down to this, if, as evolutionary scientists say, what our brains tell us about morality, love, and beauty is not real, if it's merely a set of chemical reactions designed to pass on our genetic code, then so is what their brains tell them about the world. Why is it they should trust them? So it's really going to be an important thing that when you hear people talk about you can't use the way you feel or rationality because it's a process of natural selection, they can't take that away from the religious argument without taking that away from their own argument, right? Either reason can be trusted or it can't, right? But you can't have it both ways. Can't. So Keller closes by saying this: if there is no God, we should not trust our cognitive faculties at all. Oh, but we do, and that's the final clue. If we believe God exists, then our view of the universe gives us a basis for believing that cognitive faculties work, since God could make us able to form true beliefs and knowledge. If we believe in God, then the Big Bang is not mysterious, nor the fine-tuning of the universe, nor the regularities of nature. All the things we see make perfect sense. Also, if God exists, our intuitions about the meaningfulness of beauty and love are to be expected. If you don't believe in God, not only are all these things profoundly inexplicable, but your view that there is no God would lead you not to expect them. Though you have little reason to believe your rational faculties work, you go on using them. You have no basis for believing that nature will go on regularly, but you continue to use inductive reasoning and language. You have no good reason to trust your senses that love and beauty matter, but you keep doing it. The theory that there is a God who made the world accounts for the evidence we see better than the theory that there is no God. Those who argue against the existence of God go right on using induction, language, and their cognitive faculties, all of which make far more sense in a universe in which a God has created and supports them all by his power. Next week, Clues for God, we're going to talk about the problem of sin, and a clue for God that we hopefully could use these opportunities to share with skeptics. Thanks for being here.
Let's mark those places where they're shot and like that's the problem is that the planes that didn't survive were shot in the engines. So they're gone, but they didn't armor the engines because that's not the places that they're survived. So the planes that survived are not, they didn't survive. Right, they didn't. So because we want to success, and because we are out here, and because we're alive, we'll use that as evidence that however it happened, that it must have worked, because otherwise we wouldn't exist.
Literally, that's like freezing water and like that's